And a good Monday morning. I don't know how good it is for the Birds fans here on Birds 365. This will be the toughest show Johnny Mac and I have done, and it's show number 678. You got to probably back it up into the 500s in February, coming off a Super Bowl loss to the Kansas City Chiefs for as tough a Monday that we've had to do here on Birds 365, but we will give it to you for the next couple hours. He's McMullen, I'm McDonald. It's Mac and Mac, Birds 365. 42-19. Didn't see that coming. The 49ers just put a beat down on the Eagles yesterday in their own house. And, John, for me, it's a question of underestimation. Which did we, and when I say we, I mean you, me, Eagles fans, a lot of other Eagle media, and maybe the Eagles themselves, which was underestimated more? How good the San Francisco 49ers are, or the things that we've been bringing up? And God forbid I ever bring up any Eagle shortcomings on this show. I get crushed by several members of the stream. But we did bring them up, and we did note them, and we did say, yeah, but the Eagles just win. Yeah, I know they're the 27th ranked pass defense. Yeah, but they just win. We knew they were out there. We tried to at least not overemphasize them. Oh, they all came flying to the top yesterday against the 49ers. Which underestimation was greater, the fact that the Eagles have issues or that the 49ers are as good as they are?
I think the 49ers as good as they are for most of the fan base. For me personally, it was definitely the Eagles keep finding ways to win. And this is where, and you and I probably talk about, from my perspective, power rankings or power polls too much, because they mean the same today or tomorrow when they come out as they will of Saturday. But a lot of those had San Francisco better. And this is the time where PFF and some of those should take a bow and say, no, this is why, because that intangible stuff, while it can be real at times, is not going to be consistent over the long haul. And that's a better football team. That's a better football team. As we stand today, the San Francisco 49ers are a better football team, if you're going to be honest. And they were a better football team on Friday. Mm-hmm. And I kind of knew it. And I said on the show, logically, I should pick San Francisco. And I picked the Eagles. I went away from logic. Now, did I think they were going to beat them that badly? No. Not in a million years. And the curve's got to stop with Sean Desai today. 6 consecutive touchdowns. 6 consecutive touchdowns. Let me say that again. 6 consecutive touchdowns, not scoring drives, touchdowns. That's absurd. Even as good as San Francisco is, you got to put up some kind of a fight. You got to do something. And it's players more than coaches, obviously. But I think Sean's been on a curve, and everybody, we've talked about that and how he's doing so. And I think he has done a great job for the most part. But it all fell apart yesterday. So I think most of it is San Francisco's just really, really good, really, really difficult to deal with. But it's not, they lost 3 consecutive games because they didn't have Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel. And if these two teams see each other down the road, I don't know what the circumstance is going to be. It doesn't mean things are done for the Eagles, but it does mean that they got some work to do to catch up to the 49ers from a personnel perspective, which is, I know, tough for people to hear. But you saw those playmakers. I mean, and Deebo was enemy number 1. We'll do something about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, my God, the guy had four catches and 4 targets. The minute his foot got in the ground, he's gone. Christian McCaffrey, we all know that's the best. You know what I think's ironic about this, Jody? Howie Roseman's the one guy who's been above reproach, and I think he's the best GM in football. That doesn't change. But I do think you see John Lynch is in the conversation. I think these are the 2 best rosters in the NFL, but they go about it differently. And for the Eagles, long term, I agree with their philosophy. But guess who had the best linebacker in football yesterday and the best running back in football yesterday?
Yep.
At two positions, the Eagles incredibly devalue. Now, linebacker, they're not only devalued, but they're injured. So you had guys who shouldn't even be out there. And by the way, the other shoe dropped with Nicholas Morrow. Terrible football game. Been playing good all season. And then running back, the Eagles have a good running back, but they don't have Christian McCaffrey. Can we stop that with DeAndre Swift? They don't have that type of
No.
player.
No, but nobody does.
That's
McCaffrey, it's not just the Eagles, it's every other football team.
true, and that's what I said to Seth yesterday on the postgame show. Nobody has Christian McCaffrey.
No.
So you can't. But the bottom line is they paid him. They went out and they paid him, and he's the highest paid running back in football by far. Fred Warner's the best middle linebacker in football. They drafted him, they developed him, they paid him. Now, the Eagles had a good middle linebacker, not as good as Fred Warner, but they had a good middle linebacker. They didn't even draft him, but they developed him and they didn't pay him.
Right.
A modicum of. So it's time to also take a look at Howie Roseman and say, at those two particular positions, maybe you got to do a little bit more than you are doing. I think that's fair to say as well.
And oh, by the way, I know this is 2020 hindsight, and you can always be so brilliant in 2020 hindsight. But I know I said it, and I'm pretty sure you said it too, because you've been a McCaffrey fan forever. When that trade came down, I said the 49ers don't overpay any. It's not like they're giving up a king's ransom, a second, a third, a fourth, and a future fifth. That's not outrageous for the best player at his position in the National Football League. And the 49ers were willing to pay that price, and Howie Roseman wasn't, plain and simple, because they don't put that much valuation on the running back position. And if the 49ers run off and get themselves a championship at the end of this year, it's going to come back and bite Howie in the butt. Because, again, 2020 hindsight, readily admitting Tyler Steen, Brown, Keely Ringo, you wouldn't give up those three players for Christian McCaffrey and a future fifth-round draft pick? Are you kidding me? We now know the Eagle players that were taken in those positions where they would have had to come up with the same value for the
by value, I wasn't necessarily talking about what they gave up to get him. I was talking about the contract. But you're right. Even when you talk about what they gave up to get him, the Eagles wouldn't do that. The Eagles wouldn't do that. But then you put on top of it the kind of money he makes and the kind of, how far ahead he is of the rest of the group. They wouldn't do that, even more so. And when you have a player that's so unique, I think maybe you need to be less hard line about that. But that's not even to say, again, there's only one. One thing I had a problem with yesterday, and we know it's Philadelphia, so it's the running game. They didn't run the football. Well, they got behind, and they weren't effective. And Jason Kelce, of all people, said, who wants to run the ball? Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelce. They're the first people that want to run the football. Jordan Mailata, obviously. They always want to run the football. And he's like, well, we weren't successful. So what play caller is going to run the football when you're not successful? So that's part of it as well. But then the fact the Eagles stopping the run. Again, it's McCaffrey. You're not going to see Tony Pollard's a great player. That's it. You're not going to see Christian McCaffrey again until you see Christian McCaffrey again. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you get a second chance at him in the playoffs. Last week, if you look at the raw numbers, it looked bad for the Eagles. But it was Josh Allen. The running backs averaged less than 3 yards a carry in the Buffalo game, the Buffalo running backs. And I said on the show, you're not going to see Josh Allen again. Well, maybe see Lamar in the Super Bowl. You're not going to see him again. And sure enough, that the quarterback run game went back to normal. So part of it is you got to tip your cap to the other team. And that's why, to your original question, I go, yeah, San Francisco is really good. Really good.
Along those same lines, you told us, me and the streamers and everybody else, that one of the reasons why you picked Eagles to win the game was the advantage the Eagle defensive line had over the offensive line of the San Francisco 49ers, giving Trent Williams his props as a future Hall of Famer, but the other four guys. The other four guys did a pretty good job of keeping Brock Purdy clean yesterday. The Eagles had 2 sacks for all of 4 yards for the entire game, and one came in the first series with Hassan Reddick getting home. That was only a 2-yard sack, but it forced a fourth down punt. So I don't want to say it wasn't an effective play. It just wasn't a game-changing type play. The rest of the game, 1 sack for 2 yards. The Eagles defensive line, which is supposed to be the best in the National Football League, not nearly as good as expected. Or the 49er offensive line, I guess we got some apologizing to do because they held up just fine.
Did they? I don't know. I gotta look. I gotta relook. They get the ball out quickly, but that's part of what they do. The first 15 minutes, the Eagles dominated. That's what's so interesting to me. 15 versus 45.
Yeah.
The first 15 minutes, the Eagles defense looked like world beaters. Hassan Reddick looked like he was going to get arrested for terrorism. He was wrecking the game just like he wrecked the game in the NFC Championship game. And all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. Now, why? First of all, San Francisco, for whatever reason, they only had 2 drives in the first quarter. And it was interesting, the dichotomy between the first and the second quarter, because it was the exact opposite in the second quarter. The Eagles only had 2 drives, and San Francisco had 2 opportunities. The Eagles got 2 field goals. The 49ers got 2 touchdowns. So right now, that's where the game sort of changed. The opportunities, they took advantage of the red zone opportunities. The Eagles had to settle for field goals, which is never good against a team like San Francisco. And then they did the old defer, sandwich the first half and the second half with touchdowns. That's what you want to do. That's why people do that. Not enough people accomplish it. They accomplished it. They probably won the game right there. But as far as what happened in the first 15 minutes versus the rest of the game, Christian McCaffrey didn't touch the ball once in those first 2 drives. So I don't know what Kyle was thinking. He thought he had something. It wasn't working. And then he adjusted and went back to his, wheelhouse. And
right. But then let me ask you about Sirianni/Judd. They get away from DeAndre Swift. The 49ers down 6-0 said,
that's
our bad. We should have given to McCaffrey more. The Eagles just keep throwing and bring in Kenny Gainwell, and they didn't get back to their guy. Why didn't they get back to their guy down 14-6?
Why are we? This is what I said to Seth. Why are we comparing DeAndre Swift to Christian McCaffrey? This is where Eagles fans
because he's the Eagles' number 1 running back.
And okay, but that's it. Away from their number 1. That's the only.
Got away from their number 1 running back. Yeah, their number 1 running back is better than DeAndre Swift, but the Eagles should not give it to DeAndre Swift because
I'm not saying
it's not Christian McCaffrey. Therefore, we should just not give it to him. That doesn't make any sense.
I'm not saying, but the only comparison is their number 1 running backs. I'm not comparing them as players because
you shouldn't.
That part of it's absurd. He's the best running back the Eagles have, but I think too many Eagles fans think he's some kind of
Christian McCaffrey. No, nobody's Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying. The second part is I get why everybody's focused on offense, and there's plenty to complain about offensively. Don't get me wrong, but how do you get past 6 consecutive touchdowns?
That's true.
How do you know what the Eagles?
What happened to the Eagle defensive line? I asked you the question. I kind of danced around. You didn't give me an answer. You'd said on Friday the Eagle defensive line is much more better.
I think if you look at the film, and I'm interested to see the PFF grades, they'll come out about 12-1 typically. The Eagles, except for Josh Sweat, who was erased, and by the way, Lane Johnson erased Nick Bosa. There were good performances. Lane Johnson was freaking. Nick Bosa can't do a damn thing. That's the defensive player of the year. Can't do a damn thing against Lane Johnson. It's freaking amazing. There were good performances. I think when you look at the grades, and we'll see, and I got to rewatch the game. I think the defensive line played fine. The back seven was embarrassing. Embarrassing. They had to play like they played in the first 15 minutes, which is not sustainable. That's not sustainable to play like Hassan Reddick played in those first 15 minutes. He was probably the guy most fired up for whatever reason. Hassan, I think, took all the chirping from the 49ers for all the talk there was. I think if you said the one Eagles player who took it the most to heart, I think was Hassan Reddick for whatever reason. I think, and he came out to prove a point, and he did in those first 15 minutes. And I'm sure San Francisco helped from there. I'm sure there were a lot of adjustments. And again, late night, I haven't even rewatched the game. I got to rewatch the game. But but the Eagles back seven was the problem. The linebackers were awful. You and I were texting back and forth during the game about slip screens and bubble screens. Well, guess what? If you just tackle, you might have a 6, 7, 8-yard gain, even with Deebo Samuel, even a tackle. The back seven was atrocious. They were scared to death of Brandon Ayuk. And Slay was playing so softly on him. I thought they gave him way too much respect. Very good player, but I mean, he's not Tyreek Hill. They were playing him like he was Tyreek Hill. And then, what is Eli Ricks doing on the field? And it wasn't a lot of snaps, but you saw him completely whip on the touchdown to Jennings. I've never seen so many missed tackles. That back seven is awful I shouldn't say is awful, was awful on this particular day. So I think if you look at it, Jalen Carter played well. He got frustrated. He's not used to losing. He got the personal foul. By the way, we got to talk about Dom. We'll talk about Dom with Marcus because I know he'll have a strong opinion. We're going to have Marcus Hayes on. Dom, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. But by
the way, Ref's got that right. I know that.
Yeah,
it caught like iron the statement. They did exactly right. Dom needed to be taught, and Greenlaw needed to be taught. You can't put your hand in it. I don't care if he's a player or not. You can't put your hand in somebody's face. The referees absolutely positively got that one right. And it was, if you're evaluating it from an on the field stance, major advantage Eagles. Greenlaw's coming off, and you're just losing Dom. So Nick's got to carry his own headset.
And let me say, Jody, what we were talking about them running it. So that's my thought on the defensive front. I think they played well, except for Josh.
I don't know how you can possibly say that with the numbers they put up.
But yeah, I'm not. They get the ball out quickly. I'm not. You look at San Francisco's sacks of Jalen Hurts.
So did you? Well, and again, John. You mentioned to the streamers on Friday you thought the Eagle defensive line would be able to make Brock Purdy's life more difficult and for him not to be able to do what he's been doing basically since he became the starter of the 49ers, and that didn't happen yesterday. Did the back seven suck worse? Oh, yeah, they did. But the defensive line did nothing to take Purdy out of his game. So are you giving him a pass for it?
I'm not giving him a pass. He was 0 for 4 for 0 yards in the first 15 minutes.
John, they play 60. You know that. The first quarter becomes irrelevant after you play the last 3.
I get it, but I get you're a Purdy guy. And I get you want to say, look at the plays. Look at the plays. Look at the touchdown to Ayuk. We were touching. He had to dive for that ball. He almost dropped it. Some people think he dropped it. He's throwing bubble screens to Deebo Samuel's going 49 yards for a touchdown. He's a great point guard. He's not making.
You're still disrespecting him. He's not a point guard. Calling him a point guard is, in my opinion, disrespectful. He is the equivalent of any, just purely in production. He is the equivalent of any quarterback in the league, including Patrick Mahomes, including Jalen Hurts, including any other one you want to name.
And he is that good. This is why I'll turn it on the head for you. This is why you said, would mock people like, I don't know, PFF, who had San Francisco number 1 and the Eagles number 7. and say, well, the Eagles are 10-1 because production says it. Well, yeah, but if you don't play right and the ball's bouncing your way and Valdez-Scantling's dropping a ball and you see all these anomalies, eventually it's going to regress to the mean. Eventually it's going to regress to the mean. I compared the guy to a Hall of Fame point guard last week, a Hall of Fame player. That's not an insult. It's the type of quarterback he is. He's not going to make Josh Allen throws down the field. Is that an insult? He's not going to make those plays. He uses Deebo Samuel beautifully. He uses Christian McCaffrey beautifully. He's a great touch thrower in the middle of the field. He uses George Kittle beautifully. He uses Brandon Ayuk. But he's not the guy who's going to make tight window throws, who's going to make something out of nothing. That's not an insult. He's on the perfect situation for him. He's doing a tremendous job. I compared him to a Hall of Fame point guard. Somehow that's an insult because he's not Steph Curry. Lamar Jackson is Steph Curry. Patrick Mahomes is Steph Curry. Patrick lost the game. He's Mo Cheeks. It's not an insult.
How is Lamar Jackson Steph Curry?
Because he can do things.
Samuel. Because
he can do things on his own. He doesn't need Deebo Samuel. He doesn't need bubble screens. He can go out and make a play on his own. It's not an insult. Are you going to sit there and say, if a play breaks down, okay, and you got to have something, maybe it's a 10-yard first down, where would Brock Purdy be on the guys that you would need to go get those 10 yards when everything broke down? So you don't have to bubble screen the Deebo. You got to make it on your own. You got to figure out a way how to do it. Where on your list would Brock Purdy be? Where on your list to do something by himself would Brock Purdy be?
Well, he's not as good a runner as Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts. I give you that. He's just not capable of doing that. But I think he can buy time and make a throw and get it to someone else. The first read isn't there.
If it's 4th and 15, season on the line, Kyle Shanahan draws up the play. It doesn't work, and he's got to do something. It doesn't have to be running the ball. It could be extending the play. It could be going and going and going and going. And you just got to make a play. Where would he be on your list of the guys to be able to do that?
Not far behind anybody else, including Mahomes and Jalen Hurts.
That's where you and I disagree completely. I mean, he's not to say he would be in the top 15 in that limited category.
15. That's a freaking insult, top 15. There are 15 quarterbacks that can make a play over Brock Purdy. That's what you just said. You want to stand behind that?
By themselves. I don't only stand behind it. That might be too high. I not only stand behind it, make a play by himself. You're going to give Brock Purdy credit for what Deebo Samuel did. That's what you're doing. Where's Deebo's credit?
John, just to keep it in a Philadelphia vein, do we ever bring up the fact that A.J. Brown catches a 7-yard slant and turns it into a 35-yard play because it was Jalen who threw it? Or do we just go, oh, that's a great design play? Well, no, we never bring it up. But when Purdy does it, well, Purdy got a 50-yard touchdown because Deebo ran for 40 yards. We don't do it with other quarterbacks. Why do we do it with Purdy?
If A.J. took a bubble screen 49 yards and somebody was on this air saying, oh, Jalen Hurts made a 49-yard touchdown, I'd be saying the same damn thing. That's A.J. Brown. That's not Jalen Hurts. So what's the difference? That's Deebo Samuel. That's not Brock Purdy. Come on, be realistic. Who's that touchdown? Brandon Ayuk. That's Brandon freaking Ayuk making a dive and catch on a ball that was poorly thrown. What I mean, come on, let's be honest.
I'm being honest. I think that when we look at things through eagle-colored glasses, we don't know that Jalen Hurts has tremendous pieces around him.
The Eagles. I'm not the Eagles colored glasses guy. I will say the same thing with the Eagles as I say with the 49ers. If AJ makes a play, that's AJ, not Jalen Hurts. But Jalen Hurts is capable of making more plays than Brock Purdy. I'm sorry, he is. He is.
We'll see how the MVP
And by the
voting
way,
does, because
the
Brock
same.
Purdy just jumped up to actually take the lead in some of the betting markets.
Well, I
And
don't. First of all, you know, the betting markets are what they are. Jalen Hurts was the MVP
the betting
yesterday.
markets, which we questioned all week, and I say we, that means McDonald and McMullen, that the Eagles were actually a favorite. And the betting markets were dead on right. The 49ers came in and kicked the Eagles' ass. So if you don't want to give the betting markets credit for it, you don't have to. I'm telling you, I do.
No, that's fine. I don't. You can give anybody credit for anything. What I'm saying is the MVP yesterday was Jalen Hurts. Today it's Brock Purdy or somebody else. So who cares? Who cares is all I'm saying. Jalen Hurts was the MVP yesterday. Brock Purdy or somebody else is the MVP today. Somebody else, if Dak Prescott beats the Eagles next week, it might be Dak Prescott.
True.
At the end of the year, we'll see who the MVP is. That's all that matters. At the end of the year, the San Francisco 49ers, remember, this is what I'll say about the Eagles. The Eagles are still in first place, still #1 seed. They had a small margin of error. That margin is now gone. So if you want some positive as an Eagles fan, they still, they got one game.
Their own destiny. If they win the rest of their games, they're the #1 seed. They know that.
And they got one game, because the other games, let's be honest, are Giants, Cardinals, Giants. So, we had talked about this.
So let me, I'm sorry to interrupt, John. And we got to get to a break. Hopefully Jeff Kurt's supposed to join us. We haven't heard from him yet. Off yesterday's performance, as bad as it was by the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think it was the entire defense. You think this team, that the back seven, they were worse. That's the worst, certainly the worst of the two groups, but defensive line didn't get Purdy off his spot. If you know ahead of time he's just a point guard, well, then you got to get quick pressure, and the Eagles didn't do it yesterday.
By the way, if you're a Hall of Fame point guard, why is that not a problem? Like, people knew I compared him to Mo Cheeks. People knew Mo Cheeks was just a point guard, was just a guy dishing. Well, why couldn't they stop him? I'm not saying it's easy to stop him. I'm saying that's what he is. That's not an insult. To call somebody a Hall, it's not an insult. But okay, I guess people take it as.
Yeah, I do, for Brock Purdy's sake. But while I'm I readily acknowledge back seven was worse. The defensive line did nothing to disrupt the point guard that is Brock Purdy. So I think their entire defense stunk. 6 straight touchdowns. Nobody gets a passing grade or a pass for me. They were terrible. That being said, we just continue to chalk up those 3 wins at the end of the season? Or do we have to at least say they should win those games, not it's rubber stamped they win those games?
Well, I would say it's rubber stamped against the Giants if they're trying. Who knows where they'll be. They might not
see. That's what came down yesterday. They're trying. They're playing all 17 now, John. The 49ers aren't losing 3 in a row again. Even if they beat the Cowboys next week, which I think they should, they're going to have to play all 17. There's no respite.
Yeah, most likely. But you never know in this league, is all I'm saying. There's upsets all the time.
See, that's what I'm asking. You never know. Cardinals, Giants, Cardinals, Giants. Can you never know?
Yeah, the Cardinals, because of Kyler. It's similar to what I was saying, because he can make a play on his own. So he can pull a horseshoe out of his you-know-what and make a play and make a crazy play. So I wouldn't say it's a fait accompli. I would say it's very likely the Eagles are going to win those final 3 games, but nothing's ever for certain in this league. But Kyler, Kyler is that type of guy I'm talking about. He can make something out of nothing and turn something, and you can have one of those crazy moments.
And the point that I'm trying to make, and I apologize if we either disagree or you're not getting it. Dorian Thompson-Robinson can make something out of nothing, but he's Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Just the ability to make something out of nothing, to be an athletic quarterback,
and that's not what I said.
By 3 seconds,
and that's
doesn't
not
necessarily make you a superstar quarterback.
I didn't say it did. You're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm saying 4th and 15 got to have it moment, and you got to make something out of nothing. Where would he be on your list? I'm not saying good quarterbacks. You just brought up a bad quarterback who would be ahead of him. Josh Dobbs would be ahead of him in that situation. in that specific situation, doesn't make them better quarterbacks. In that specific situation, if you go by the Josh Dobbs game, the first Josh Dobbs game when he got traded to Minnesota, the Atlanta game, he made 2 plays, and he's terrible. But he made 2 plays to win one particular game completely on his own. That's what I'm saying. That's it. That limited situation, 4th and 7th, I think it was. Got to have it break down. Where would he be? Not high. And you just proved my point, to be honest.
Sure, I did. My point is, I think you're putting way too much emphasis on the ability to make a play on 4th and 15 when you've got a 90 play, 65. How many plays that there are in the game? That one play is going to come up once out of these 60 plays. I'm not putting that big an emphasis on the 4th and 15. You got to make an athletic play,
and that's very fair. But all I said was he's a great point guard. And you thought that was disrespectful, and I compared him to Maurice Cheeks, and you thought that was disrespectful. I don't think it is disrespectful. I think he's doing a tremendous job in the system he's in, and that's his job description. And that's all he should be judged on. And he's doing a freaking tremendous job. But if you put him on a bad team, if you put him on the Chicago Bears, he's not making weird plays like Justin Fields to win a game occasionally. That's not an insult. He's a better quarterback than Josh Fields. Justin Fields. He's a better quarterback, but I'm saying there's certain things he can't do. It's not an insult. It's not an insult. He's a point guard, and he's a really good point guard. And he's a better point guard than Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's a better point guard than Sam Darnold, and he's a better point guard than everybody else Kyle has won with. And that deserves applause and credit. But I'm not going to make believe he can make plays like Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes.
And it'll be quite telling if a point guard wins the MVP at the end of this year. How do I get my hands on that kind of point guard? He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. We haven't taken a break yet. We'll do that here. We're waiting on Jeff Kerr. We'll send a text out to Kerr. He's supposed to jump in with us on an early spot. Hour number 2, Marcus Hayes of the Inquirer is going to jump in here on Birds 365.